This is a lecture from Open Tuition. To benefit from the lecture, you should download the free lecture notes from opentuition.com.
Recruitment and selection. Of all the assets that a company has, or an organisation in general has, human resources is often the asset which is hardest to get right. There is greater variation between people than there is between machinery. In addition, people can leave one evening and never come back, and they can simply decide to relocate themselves to a competitor. That's not going to happen with your IT system or your machinery. Therefore, there can be unpredictable requirements to go out and recruit and select people simply to replace people who may have left. In addition, there may be a shortage of suitable people. Skills rise and fall, and there's no particular reason why the population at large reflects the skills which are needed at exactly the right time. What we have to do is, first of all, define our requirements. And it's requirements not just headcount, but requirements of particular skills. And this is basically a kind of budget, really. So if we, for example, have got maybe 60 engineers, and what we're planning is to maybe double the size of our business in, let's say, 3 years, we know we're going to need 120 people. And let's say in 3 years, let's say we lose about 10 per annum. So there's going to be 3 off there, we're down to 30. Therefore, we know that our recruitment target is going to be about 90. It won't be exactly 90. Different things will happen. Predicting 3 years ahead is not going to be precise. But we need to know whether over 3 years we need to recruit 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people. And we need to have an idea whether we're going to do that smoothly over the 3 years, or maybe it's all more towards the final of the 3 years. So you need a kind of recruitment budget to really estimate the size of the task that's in front of you. Then you have to attract applicants. This is done by advertising, either in newspapers, or maybe you go to an employment agency, or increasingly people are advertising vacancies through the internet. And then from the applicants, maybe 30 or 50, you have to whittle that down, usually to about 6 to interview, and then to the one person that you're going to select for employment. The first thing we have to do is what's called job analysis. And this is collecting and analysing and sets out the content of jobs. Now, you might think that kind of job analysis is a kind of pointless task. But if I say, that what we need is an accounts, let's say assistant. Now, there may be a title accounts assistant, but behind that there's a whole range of activities that this person may or may not have to do. So is the accounts assistant going to be in the kind of nominal ledger department, just doing debits and credits? Are they going to maybe have specific responsibilities towards credit control? Are they going to have particular responsibilities towards capital budgeting, doing DCF, doing budgets in general, and so on? Are they going to have much liaison with the public? Do they have to write reports for their boss? And the title accounts assistant doesn't capture the variability that might be in that job. So what we have to do first is to analyse and set out the content of jobs. If someone was already doing the job, we can ask them to keep a diary for a week, so we know, they spend 80% of their time doing debits and credits, 10% of the time talking to members of the public on the phone, another 10% of the time in meetings of some sort. But until we know the nature of the job, we can't really go on and write a job description And the job description is basically the output of the job analysis. It is saying in some detail what the job will entail. And then what we're going to be having is the person specification. The person specification looks at the sort of attributes the suitable person might have. And sometimes, although slightly old-fashioned now, bad pigs is used as a way of remembering this. So what we might have, first of all, and we have to be rather careful with this nowadays, is the person's background. Nowadays you probably wouldn't really ask that, but it used to be you could go to a job interview and they would ask you what your father did. As though they were recruiting your father, not you. We would still stay very clear of that now, but it might be relevant in some situations to at least know where the person lives, to see whether or not they'd be available to come in at short notice, how easy it's going to be for them to work overtime and so on. The A is achievements, which is basically experience and qualifications. Do you have a driving license? Do you have an accountancy qualification? And the like. These are, can be divided into must have and will be nice to have. What we're going to be doing is setting out a list of requirements in the person's specification, and then we have got list of requirements, and we kind of match the recruits to that. We like a perfect match, but sometimes we're not going to get a perfect match, but we need to be able to recruit the best fit that we can. D is disposition. So this position looks at maybe how cheerful the person is, whether they seem to be somebody with a bit of ambition and the like. And you will probably know how peculiar it is sometimes, or how often maybe, you go to a restaurant or checking into a hotel, maybe boarding an airline flight, and the person is grumpy. And you think, why have they employed a grumpy person as the first person maybe you meet when you go into an office? P is physical. Again, we have to be a little bit careful about this, whether or not certain physical attributes are really necessary. Very often they're not. But say if you're going to be an airline pilot, then it's important to have good eyesight. It's important not to be colorblind, so you can tell green from red. And the like. So sometimes physical is going to be very important. Then what we have is interests, almost hobbies. And that's important because one might get a bit of a mismatch between the sort of job that someone's applying for and their outside interests. So if their outside interest said, I'm the captain of the local amateur football team, then you would probably conclude that this person's fairly sociable and has had some experience in commanding and leading. If someone says that their hobby is bird watching, then you might conclude that this person is fairly introspective, maybe not the most sociable person, could be very, very perfect in some sort of jobs, but may not be, if you like, the outgoing salesperson that you need for this particular post. After the interests, we have coming up in the G here, general intelligence. Obviously, if somebody comes with a degree, you can assume that they're fairly intelligent, but many people are applying for jobs at a lower level. And if the job is one where they're having to undergo kind of almost annual catch-ups, technical catch-ups and technical courses and so on, we have to be reasonably confident that they have enough ability, enough intelligence, if you like, to keep up to date with developments in the business. And finally, we have special aptitudes. So special aptitudes maybe is an aptitude to learn languages, maybe it's an aptitude for computer programming. If you can identify special aptitudes which match the qualities you need, then that's obviously a mark in favour of that particular candidate. What we need to be careful about is not to compare candidate A to candidate B. Candidate A might be a very friendly, chatty person. Candidate B might be a little bit more shy, a little bit more withdrawn. The danger is you become always friendly with candidate A, the outgoing one, but then you don't really spot that candidate A is not actually as well qualified in terms of these attributes as candidate B. What you should be doing is comparing the candidate to the person's specification. This brings you back on track, saying, this is what I need. You advertise vacancies to attract applicants, to the person, to match, if you like, the person's specification. You don't want to draw the adverts too wide so that you get hundreds of replies. You don't want it too narrow so you only get 2 or 3 replies. Maybe attracting about 30, 50 people would be okay. Describe the job, provide information, say the sort of experience and so on that might be useful, and you try to stimulate interest among people who may be suitable. You read the applications when they come in, and then out of the 30, maybe you go down to 6 for an interview. We'll see a slide in a moment which suggests that interviews are really not the most reliable things to be looking at, but it's almost inconceivable that you're likely to recruit somebody without meeting them either face to face or at least over the internet. You can do selection tests. Why, if somebody says it can operate Word for Windows at 80 words per minute, why gamble on it? Why not sit them down and see if they can really operate Word for Windows at the stated speed? The problem is if you recruit the wrong person, you can usually get rid of them without too much bother, because it usually takes a while before they get job security, but it's time wasted. You need them now. It takes maybe 1 or 2 months for you to recruit them, then you find they're not very useful, and then you have to go through that selection process again, and maybe 6 months goes by before you get a suitable person. You take up references, you'll write to an existing employer, and at least you should have confirmation that they do work there. This is when they join, this is their salary, this is their job title, if you like. Work sampling for some types of job, like let's say graphics design, internet design. You want to see examples of what people have done. So work sampling, they bring along a portfolio of the designs they've made. And then finally there's group selection methods. These tend to be very expensive methods employed for relatively senior recruitment or recruiting people who are going to be in a very fast track, accelerated promotion track. Basically, you maybe get 12 people together. Everyone goes away for a kind of weekend, and they're given a whole variety of tasks to accomplish. They may be given a bundle of papers, and they have to find out from this, what the issues are. You watch them interacting with other people in like a committee meeting type environment, and you recruit on the basis of kind of seeing them in operation. But it's very expensive. Interviews are very commonly used, but they are pretty poor at predicting how candidates will perform. People can put on an act for half an hour. The interviewer might not be very skilled, may not ask very good questions. And the interviews have to be structured and they have to be conducted by suitably skilled interviewers. For example, if you ask someone, can you deal with very tight deadlines, they will obviously say yes. But the follow-up question can be, can you give me an example of how you've dealt with a very tight deadline? And what were the particular major issues that caused problems in dealing with that? And this is to draw them out and to explain in more detail what their skills are. Selection testing is becoming more common. Formal tests, it can be proficiency, as I said, like the word processing speed here. Increasingly, people are carrying out psychometric tests. There is a questionnaire, and people fill this in, and you get information about how good they are at working alone, how good they might be in being part of a team, something about their ambitions, something about their leadership qualities, and the like. You might give them an intelligence test. You might give them an aptitude test. So again, for programmers, you can set them a special little aptitude test to see how they get on. Equal opportunities. In the UK, there are many anti-discrimination laws. And these relate to, what they actually relate to is something called protected characteristics. And you are not allowed, in general, to discriminate on the basis of the applicant's race, sex, disability, religion, sexual orientation, or age. There are very, very few exceptions to this. For example, if you wanted someone to look after your aged grandmother or something like that, so your grandmother is female, really in the law, really for the sake of decency it's referred to, you're allowed to insist that the carer is female, but if you are advertising for actors doing Romeo and Juliet, you are allowed to specify that Romeo must be male and so on. But it's very, very limited in these exceptions. You must give these people, all of these people, equal opportunities. And there are three ways in which you can fall foul of equal opportunities legislation. There is direct discrimination. So in an advert which says, salesman wanted. That is direct discrimination because it is said salesman. If you weren't going to discriminate there, you would say salesperson or sales representative. So that is direct. Indirect discrimination is a bit trickier and is relatively easy to stumble into inadvertently. However, to give an outrageous example, you could say salesperson must be 2 meters tall and large black beard. And those descriptions, 2 meters tall with a large black beard, would be held to unfairly favour male applicants, because it's going to be relatively difficult for female applicants to meet those criteria. We have to be very careful on this, and then you do with physical differences, height, strength, and so on. If you say you want to recruit someone and maybe for safety, they have to be, below 1.5 meters because they're working in restricted spaces or something of that sort, that would be held to be unfairly discriminating against men. And then there is victimization. Victimization is where an employee, and these equal opportunities, it's not just recruitment, it's also in pay, it's also in promotion, But victimization is where an employee is taking you to an employment tribunal, and the employment tribunal has found for the employee and against you, and then when they come back to work, you kind of treat them unfairly. You want to get your own back on them, so they get the worst jobs, they are judged more harshly than other people. That is victimization, and that is also against the law. As well as equal opportunities legislation, we also, by and large, need to encourage diversity. So diversity means ensuring that the composition of the workforce broadly reflects the composition of the population as a whole. So a well-diversified workforce would have roughly 50-50 men, women. If in the workforce as a whole 10% of people were black, then a diverse workforce would have 10% of the employees black, and so on. This is not only, if you like, probably moral and ethical of itself and can then bring approval to the organization, but it also can be justified on very commercial terms. What is the point in recruiting someone who is like you? Would it not be better maybe to recruit somebody with different experiences and different strengths, so that you build up the skill set of the organization? What is the point in simply ruling out a large part of the population? So if you make employment very unattractive to women, then you are really cutting your potential applicants by 50%. And that doesn't make sense. What happens if you are selling to people who are of mixed race and all your salespeople are, let's say, white? And again, it's not going to endear yourself perhaps to customers to have this difference between the people in the company, people trying to sell to you, and the makeup of the potential customer base. So diversity is not only a moral good and enhances really the ethical stance of the company, but it's also very much a commercial consideration to improve affordability.